They wanted to explore our environment. And, you know, in life these days, you're going really fast trying to keep up with everything, and Lionel kind of forced us to slow down. So it was a really beautiful experience for my family. And then in the process, we realized that there were no senior dog advocates in Southern California at all. And then we were alerted that there were actually senior dogs in shelters and that people actually had to give them up. And we didn't quite understand that, but in the process of growing, we realized there are circumstances where people can't keep their pets. You know, people who are aging, and they have to choose between their pet's medication and their own medication, or their pets need to get out frequently, or they have to lift them and they can't, you know, get out of bed themselves, or you know, people are moving and they have to move to a smaller place where they have a large dog and the dog has mobility issues. So there's like a lot of things where we realized over the years that people can't keep their senior dogs. So we decided that it was a necessity. Our community needed us to create this platform, this agency, where we could advocate and find either permanent foster families who are willing to take them in and keep them for the rest of their lives if they had chronic conditions or terminal ailments, or some of these dogs just needed, you know, like a stepping stone. We were their stepping stone. They needed, you know, a dental, and then we could find them a new family to start over. So in the process, we have served almost 1,000 senior dogs. So we've learned something along the way in that process. And we've also developed, in addition, a program called Keeping Pets Home. So as many animals were coming in and we were rescuing, we just couldn't keep up with the volume. And so we decided we needed to have financial assistance for people so that they can keep their pets. So our Keeping Pets Home program does that. And we funded about between 2 and 250 families so that they can keep their pets, which means those pets don't enter shelters, they don't come through our doors, and they get to stay where they want to stay and their families want them to stay. So that's a really nice part of our organization that has developed over the process of 10 years. And then we have our Always Home program, and this is situations where people can't keep their pets, and it's no fault of their own. You know, there's just things in life that happen and they need help. So we open our doors through our wonderful foster families to place them into our care. And so I would like to acknowledge right now a couple of people that are here today. Cindy Holseth, raise your hand, stand up, whatever you want to do. She is amazing. She is one of our dedicated foster families. So if it wasn't for people like Cindy, you know, we'd have to turn these animals away. We also have Ren and Brian. Well, you're going to hear probably a little bit more about their dog today. Anyways, they're amazing adopters and foster families. So in this process, we've learned a lot about different medical conditions. We have kind of two categories, the things that are like the common things that come up, and then those really weird things that just happen, and we have to try and figure out how we're going to resolve them alongside our vets that we work with. That's our general vets that we work with, and then also holistic practitioners like the Marsdens here. And we have, if you can see, there's a couple pictures of dogs. We have the first one is Gerard. He was anemic, that terrible skin, but we didn't really know why. We did lots of diagnostics, but never got really an answer. And so it was like, okay, we'll send them home and try these things. Here's a cytokine injection. Let's cross our fingers and see if it works, right? So there's situations like that that come up where we're like, we get home and there's a little bit of like, we want more of an answer, right? And so that's where we have things. Are you okay if I pitch a doctor?
Oh yeah.
So for a dog like Gerard, we started him on a Cesarex, which is the skin one. And although he got the cytokine injection, it didn't really work, and so we started him on the Adoptrex, changed food, great food. We have homemade food that he gets every day, and we've seen improvements. And then you have dogs like Sydney, the one in the middle, German Shepherd. He has mobility issues, spinal issues. He came to us non-ambulatory, so he was an emergency rescue from the shelter. He could not walk, and today he is now walking. And you know, it was kind of one of those things. Again, took him to the vet, did the x-rays, and said, well, here's some anti-inflammatories, cross your fingers, hope it works. Does it help? Of course, it did help, but we needed a little bit more. So we started him on a product that's not up here today, but it's on its way. Yeah, it's on its way. But it's a mix of herbs that helps with his mobility. Again, also changing his diet. And over time, we saw a reduction, likely in Steve, you can talk more to this, but a reduction of inflammation and his ability to start walking. It's not perfect. He's kind of like a drunken sailor, but he's at least walking. And then Sammy's a really special one. Sammy's diabetic, and with diabetic dogs often comes pancreatitis. And so we battled up and down with the pancreatitis. Again, going to the vet, some hospitalizations, medications to come home. They work, you know, temporarily for a period of time, and then we're back at the vet again. So, you know, thanks to Steve, we started him on actually this product, Adoptrex, right here. And he, you know, the flare-ups of pancreatitis have reduced. They've gone down. We're not really making those trips to the vet. The idea is to kind of prevent that from happening. And so Sammy is happy to this day, running around like a crazy poodle diabetic, and he's very, very happy. And so these are some of these like common medical conditions that you see, that we see in the almost 1,000 dogs, you know, that we've seen through the organization, and that you as pet owners have probably seen too. And there's this level of wanting a little bit more for your pet. So that's kind of where it was a blessing to meet and work with Steve, because he gave us that next level of what we needed in order to, you know, when it came to our dog's health, you know, we're coming home, we're getting kind of a Band-Aid with medications, but we didn't want to go back to the vet. We didn't want our dogs to be sick. When your pet's sick, it's like the worst feeling in the world, and all you want to do is be able to fix them. So thanks to Steve, we've been able to address some of these really common conditions. And then we have what are some really uncommon conditions. Who's ever even heard of transmissible venereal tumors? Okay, not a lot of people, right? Because it's not very common. And one of the treatments is chemotherapy. But in order to do that, your dog needs to be healthy. And Cindy Lou, we would repeat lab work over and over and over again, and she would act like this happy puppy. She was only, I think, maybe 6 or 7. She was a young one for us. So every time the lab work came back, they were like, oh, sorry, we can't do treatment. And in the meantime, the venereal tumors on her bottom were ulcerating, they were necrotic, they were smelling, and like at this point we were like, it's either you do the treatment or you euthanize her, because it's quality of life. So we had to kind of really, really start searching and pushing and asking lots of hard questions and holding vets to help us. And everyone was really, really afraid, and we finally found a vet that was willing to work with us. And of course, I said, I'll sign a waiver. You need me to sign something saying I understand the risks involved, I understand this may cause death for my pet, but what you're telling me is if this dog doesn't get this treatment, then I'm faced with death anyways. So please just help us. So she got the treatment, and she's relatively healthy. She has some other medical conditions, but she no longer has the venereal tumors. And then we had Maggie May. And Maggie May actually was one of the first, she was probably in her first year or two of rescue. She came to us with heartworm. Has anybody ever had a dog with heartworm? Okay, again, not super common here, but it does happen. She was 13 at the time. We went in, did the heartworm test, we did x-rays, and her heart was just full of heartworm. And our vets turned to us and they said, we can't do the treatment. It's too risky. We have the treatment, but it's going to kill her. And we said, well, what are the alternatives, right? So basically you're telling me she's going to die because she can't have the treatment. But if you gave her the treatment, she's going to die. So we had to do, and this was actually before we met Steve, but we had to do a lot of research. And in the process, we came across a natural holistic product called Heartworm Free. And if you go to their website, our review is like up at the top because they saved her life. Was it risky? Absolutely. Was there a chance she could pass from it? Absolutely. But what other choice did we have? So it was one of those situations where we really just had to kind of dive in and make a decision of what was going to be best for her. That product helped our vets. We took her back and did a repeat x-ray, and they were like, is this the same dog? Like, there's no heartworm. Where did it go? And sure enough, it worked. And they were shocked, but again, we had to say to them, you gave us no options. We needed something for them. So whether it's a common condition or an uncommon condition, as pet owners, we're looking for things because we want the best for our pets. And when we're sitting at home and we're watching them in pain as pet owners, or they're uncomfortable, or there could be something else out there, we have to be their best advocates. And so having cared for nearly 1,000 animals, that's the choice that we've had to make. And in the process, we're making that choice for that dog, but we're learning as well for future cases, for future dogs that may have those conditions as well. So our meeting and working with Steve was like the biggest blessing in disguise, because we were kind of heading down that pathway of like, we want to know more. We want to have alternative options. But we were kind of just like pulling at straws. Like, oh, there's something, let's try that. Oh, there's something over there, let's try that. But we didn't really know what we were doing. So when Steve came along and was able to help guide us, it was even better. So, how am I doing on time? Okay, I'm gonna go then. All right, so what does this all mean? Okay, if you see this picture, how many of you have felt like this as a pet owner? Yeah, like so many times where I'm like, just got back from the vet or was at the vet 5 days ago, and I'm like, okay, now what? Right? So the thing is we've got to be the best advocates. So we've got to find, if we're not satisfied with something or we're wanting more, we have to be willing to step forward. We have to be willing to ask questions. We have to be willing to think about what the right questions are. Because when you're sitting in your vet's office, do you have a lot of time with them? Not normally. When you're sitting at your own doctor's office, do you have a lot of time with them? Not often. So you have to be prepared, and you need to go in being ready to ask the right questions and give them the right information, okay? And that's one of the biggest things. So inside your, in your bags, which I see some people are using as fans, that's fine, double purpose. I love it. We have created what we call our Lionel's Legacy Senior Dog Rest Pet Checklist. It's Think, Question, and Plan. So Cindy is one of our coordinators, and so she's used to, every month we send out a checklist to our fosters, and it kind of asks these sort of generic questions, but when the pets need to go to the vet, we kind of ask more questions. We get kind of more specific about things. So in this is just kind of a guide for you to be able to use and keep, but especially during COVID, when you would go to the vet and they would come out to the car and take your pet and you couldn't go in or really speak with the doctor, or you were talking to the doctor on the phone, this was really, something like this was really helpful for when we asked our fosters, like, go to the vet and have all of this stuff kind of prepared and written down. And then when they were able to go, that line of communication between your vet and you about your pet was really clear. You had a better outcome because you painted a picture for your vet of how your animal was behaving in your own home. So this is for you. You can make copies of it. I even say, like, if your dog's having some medical issues where you're back and forth to the vet, fill this out before you go every time. Make a copy of it. Give one to your vet, and then put the copy in a folder so you have it. Because then you can go back and look at, like, what did happen last month? Did they have diarrhea? Did they throw? I can't remember. Was that last month or the month before? And then if you have this, you have a place to reference what happened. Okay. So as a pet owner, we have to, although we want our vets to be accountable for care, we have to be accountable for good communication to our vets as well. Okay, so that leads me mainly to the end of my part of this. I, and Cindy can attest to this too, and Brian and Red. Yeah, you can see Milo right here. There's some cute pictures. This is actually, the big one is my dog Roxy, who just recently passed. But Steve helped us keep Roxy alive for basically 2 years, 2 extra years. She's a really sick dog. And she got 2 extra great years of life because of Steve. And then we have Milo down here, who is Brian and Ren's dog. And he gets treatment from both the Marstens, essentially. He's like one lucky pup. But so meeting Steve was a total blessing. I got a phone call one day. This guy with a thick accent, kind of a funny character. And he's like, hey, my name is Paul. And I got a pitch for you. You interested in learning about like holistic medicine with dogs? And he goes, I know that's kind of like a wacky question. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, that is like amazing. Okay, tell me more. So he starts saying, Dr. Marsden. So I'm on the phone and then I'm typing Dr. Marsden. And all of a sudden I'm like, is this guy for real? I don't know. And then all this stuff pops up about Dr. Marsden. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're definitely interested. When can we start? So meeting Steve and his wife has been an incredible blessing to our organization. It's really changed how we think and how we care for our animals, and how we ask our foster families to think and care for our animals too. We have saved a tremendous amount of money from vet visits by working with Steve. Using a lot of his products and some acupuncture chiropractics too, but also looking at changing diet too, which they will talk more about. And all I can say is that Steve is extremely passionate about his work, so he truly cares. So when you hear him today, and Karen, they're so passionate about what they believe in and what they know. So you will hear that in what they have to say today. So here you go, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I have to say, Lionel's legacy has been a blessing to me too. I'm a Canadian veterinarian. I don't have any immigration status in the United States. So for 20 years, my lovely wife and colleague, Dr. Karen Marsden, has been up there in Canada with me. We had a clinic together. You'll hear more about her shortly. But she got tired of the long winters and the long dark nights. And so finally, after 20 years, she said, is it unreasonable to just go to Southern California? So we packed up, moved here, but I can't work as a Canadian veterinarian. So I wanted to help out in some way, didn't want to get rusty. And so a friend of mine, Paul Epstein, he caught on the idea of just starting to phone people and see if they would accept me working on their animals for free, just to help out. And so Laura kindly said yes, and that's now we have this partnership that just goes on and on and on. I hope it never ends. I have to say, this is probably the most dedicated person I have ever seen, apart from my wife, towards animal welfare. You will not find somebody whose heart is bigger than Laura's for looking after animals. It's just astounding what she will do for so many animals, and the people that are attracted to her, like Cindy in the front row here. If you want to give her some kudos too, just how hard they work to helping these animals just be well cared for, even if they never get a permanent home, and pay the bills. Senior dogs, they're train wrecks. And to have somebody saying, I will pay the bills for the rest of your, wouldn't you want that for you? I mean, you know, your insurance company, yes, but there's co-pays and you're paying them thousands a month. But then what if you had a Laura that just said, I got your back, whatever happens to you for the rest of your life. So those are that she's been that person for thousands of dogs. So can we just give her a little? So I definitely put some money into Lionel's legacy above whatever I have the privilege of working on with Herb. So if you ever have 25 or 50 bucks, think, I wish I could just, I know she didn't know I was going to, but honestly, if you have that, just, it's going to go to a 100% good use. Okay, enough of that, because now she's mad at me. So yes, it's been a great time. I've been a holistic veterinarian for, you know what? It's been 30 years, pretty much to this month, that I first treated an animal with integrative medicine. It was like 1992 that I first said, oh my God, like Laura, I'm frustrated. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with some of these animals. Let's just, you know, as a Hail Mary, let's just go ahead and start experimenting. Sounds bad, but you know, it's the reality of it. And just like Laura was experimenting by trying me, but at any rate, it worked. And I had these very compelling results, and then I realized there's a massive hole in my education. They're just things they never told me in vet school that are very real. So what was I going to do about it? I felt compelled to get more information. So I moved to Oregon, where I eventually met my wife, and went to university there. Eventually I became a director of that university, so kind of came full circle there. But I acquired some letters, some degrees, learned how to do this in a big time serious way. And then, because I was the only veterinarian in North America with that human background, then veterinarians said, do you mind teaching us what you know? So then I've spent the last 25 years or whatever teaching other veterinarians. So that's my backstory. And we have a herb company in Canada that we use to supply veterinarians. And because they wanted to use what I was using, so we started the herb company. But I was keenly aware that there is a big gap, that there were just things that always reached for as a veterinarian, and people had to have a holistic vet to get that for them. And that's just not always possible. So decided with this other fellow, Paul, to kind of start another company. He's no longer with it now, so now it's just Karen and myself so far, where we created things that pretty much for sure will work for pancreatitis, for severe anxiety in dogs, for true allergic dermatitis. And those are the first three things that Laura helped me create. And then there's the mobility formula I'll talk about in a second. So I think I've already done my 10 minutes. I haven't even shown my first slide yet, but I'll move things right along. So Cesarex, that's the pink one up here. And I think that if you want, you can pick those up at Dexter's today if you're interested. But even if you're not interested, I hope you'll still get some benefit out of the next few minutes when I'm talking to you. But this is Cesarex, so it's mainly for allergies, to kind of resolve true allergies. Some dogs are not allergic. They've been told their dogs are allergic, but they're not. And all they have is an excessive inflammatory response. A normal immune system, you think, oh, what's the difference? Well, the immune system is the guy shouting instructions, and the inflammatory response is somebody carrying them out. So if you had somebody calmly giving you instructions, but then you're like, ah, and you're trying to carry them out in a frenzy, that's an excess inflammatory response. A lot of animals have that. The cure is real food. Basically getting off of kibble, getting off of canned, and making it as real as you can. So a large number of dogs fit that category. Dogs that don't respond to that, which is why diet change should be your first step. If you have who's got an itchy dog? Admit it. We're all friends here. Your first step should be to change their diet. Not give them a pill, not give them a drug, not give them a herbal supplement, but to change their diet. If they don't respond to a real food diet, that tells us pretty much guaranteed that this will work because they have a true allergy. And I'll explain how this works in just a second. But that's how you know that it's not a problem with carrying out instructions, but it's a problem with the commander, is that you eat a healthy diet that calms down the instruction carryout. And if it's still really bad, well then you know it's that voice screaming at the top of your lungs to do something. And that's the immune system. And so this formula calms that voice down. Adoptrex, I call it Adoptrex because it facilitates adoption. One of the things that Laura told me when I said, so what are your big problems as a rescue? And she said, well, one of the problems is these animals, they change homes and they change diets and they get sick from the change of diet. So what do you got for me? So Laura, Laura's request was my command. And so Adoptrex was the answer to that. It's the primary culprit is pancreatitis. And so this formula resolves pancreatitis if it's there and stops acute pancreatitis from forming. And that facilitates people changing diets. So let's say when I said, change your diet, you're thinking, yeah, well, my dog probably gets sick if I change the diet. That's why we developed this. And it does start to work in allergies as well. So you would be making a dent in terms of that person screaming at the top of their lungs, even as you're starting to work in their digestive system first. The last thing, which Laura has used, but she didn't have an animal example, is this Halcyon, and it's for treating dogs like in the picture. Perhaps you know one. They're just slightly out of their minds. Ironically, you might think, well, herbs, they probably work for, mildly anxious animals, but what about ones that are completely off their rocker? Actually, the formula works best for animals that are completely nuts. So the completely insane, that's the animal that tends to help the most. So those are the three products. What they have at their core is a 2,000-year-old formula that's been used in China to treat all of these things. And one of the ways that it works, well, it works in a couple of different ways, but one of the ways it turns out that it works is by helping your intestinal tract, your microbiome. So this is pretty cutting edge stuff, this idea that the microbiome is a big driver of disease. And if you think, what's microbiome? It's the bacteria in your intestinal tract. So if you have the wrong balance in there, then you actually set yourself up for a number of different conditions, including immune problems, yes, even behavior problems, certainly digestive problems. So that's at the core of each of these is that same formula that begins to sort of rebalance the microbiome, especially if you add a probiotic. So the best probiotics, I find, are the ones that contain lactobacillus. And I'll talk about that in one second. But one of the things it does as well, besides the microbiome, or one of the ways that it helps the microbiome, is it calms animals down. So you might have noticed that a lot of itchy dogs are stressed, and a lot of, hot and bothered, right? Basically that's the problem. So yes, these Halcyon dogs are out of their minds, but the itchy dogs are oftentimes not incredibly happy about it. And even a lot of dogs with digestive upset, there's an anxiety component. So one of the ways that the core formula works is it gets rid of the stress. It calms animals down. So we're dealing with two things now that kind of contribute to immune problems, behavior problems, and GI problems, which is their microbiome and their mental state. So the herbs that calm you down, that help you deal with stress, those are called adaptogens. You might have heard of those. Ginseng is a famous one, and that is in that hormone. Of course, if you take care of, the brain can damage the microbiome, but what's really cutting edge therapy or knowledge is that the microbiome creates your brain, which is a little surprising. But there are a lot of studies now talking about how the balance of bacteria in your intestinal tract drive the depression or lack thereof, drive the development of depression, of anxiety, of even just normal brain development as you're growing. A lot of the microbiome and the compounds that it produces literally govern that process, which is pretty fascinating stuff. And it was also news to me, even just a few years ago, that the microbiome had this big role in the immune system, because it was one of those things that was never taught to me in that kind of conservative 40-year-old veterinary education in Canada. And the best way for you to understand, so how does an allergy reaction here affect my flea allergy dermatitis? Like, fill in that link for me. And the best analogy I can come up with is Paul Revere. So, Paul Revere is riding through the towns, the British are coming, getting everyone agitated, and then they all come out with their guns, the Minutemen or whatever, and they're ready to roll. Your immune system, your systemic immune system, is Paul Revere. The British, that's a disruption in your microbiome. So when your intestinal tract is not as happy as it should be, the thing that's next to it starts to suffer, and that's the intestinal tract lining. And instead of being an impervious barrier, it becomes a screen door. And the immune system is on the other side of the door. And it's like, oh my God, look what the hell is in there. We better get prepped in case there's a breach in the wall. So the immune system there gets revved up. That's appropriate. I think that's a good idea. But it makes chemicals. And those chemicals circulate through your system. Now imagine you're a dog that's getting eaten by a flea. If it's one or two fleas, it's like not a big deal, right? Unless you're allergic. So what's the difference between the one that's bitten by one or two fleas and not that itchy and the one that's allergic? It's oftentimes not the number of flea bites, it's the response to the saliva. So Paul Revere is riding as a result of the immune system getting agitated at the intestinal level, sending out Paul Revere. Paul Revere rides through the system any place that's inflamed. To the littlest degree, he says, you better panic because the British are coming. Or the Canadians, apparently. So that little bit of flea saliva that might not normally have provoked an allergic response, suddenly the inflammatory response is dealing with that, goes, whoa, I guess we got big problems. Okay, fan the flames, man the torpedoes, whatever it is. But you get this dramatic inflammatory response because of something, ironically, that's happening a long way away. It's a little bit like social media, right? Something happens in somebody's life and like a world away, it's, oh my God! Exactly like that. I should have used that on Paul Revere, because he's slowed down by a horse. So, you might think, okay, I feel like you might be stretching a bit, Steve, to sell your products. But Brian found this in the latest Journal of American Veterinary Medical Association, JAVMA. Purina is putting probiotics in their food. And what are they saying it's for? Immune system, behavior, gut, like all three. So this is not quackery. This is something that big business is getting behind. There's the cover of the JAVMA journal, and Karin also found this ad for Science Diet, same thing. And everyone's got their fancy schmancy probiotic that they're putting in the food, and they patented it and give it a splashy name and a trademark so that you'll think, okay, this is really special, it's going to totally work for me. What we have found is that kibble, every study that's done on kibble shows it depletes the microbiome. What's a healthy microbiome? It's not so much characterized by exactly who's in there, but how many are in there. It's like maybe this is too political a statement, but a healthy society isn't always determined by, is there just one type of person in there? Whereas a healthy, balanced culture determined by having a lot of different people that are in there with slightly different perspectives that can kind of give each other feedback. That's a happy microbiome. Whether or not it's a happy human society is certainly a happy, healthy microbiome. This idea of we need a lot of different microbial voices in there for the gut to function properly. Kibble does not produce that diversity. It tends to lean it out. Real foods tend to promote that diversity. And so we see more health on real foods, partly because there's a diverse microbiome. So that's how you get there faster. You eat real foods. Same for you. Don't bother taking probiotics if all you eat are potato chips, right? Like because probiotics need to be fed, and they need this diverse diet, real food diet. Besides the probiotics, or shall we say, what is it exactly that supports the bacteria? The thing that supports the bacteria are fermentable carbohydrates and soluble fiber. I think, oh, great, what's that? Actually, it's just fruits and vegetables. That's, even in a canine, they need fruits and vegetables. I find about a sixth of what's in a dish should be some combination of fruits and vegetables. Shredded, steamed, whatever. You think, which ones? Well, pretty much anything. Stay away from grapes, and go easy on the garlic. But apart from that, it's pretty much up to you. What do you got in the crisper? Shred it up and put it in there. Sweet tasting vegetables, they're a bit better. Bacteria can use those. So broccoli, when I was a kid, my parents are British, and so a Canadian kid with British parents, and so a vegetable was not cooked unless all the chlorophyll had been turned to brown. It's like, I don't know how the entire British people can live on a green island that they then turn into brown food. But every British dish is brown, some version of tan. So no one wants to eat tan food. But at any rate, so one day my mother gives me a stalk of broccoli, and she says, as I was telling her about how disgusting broccoli was to my taste buds, because she'd boil it for an hour. No kidding. Like, she'd boil canned peas for an hour. So it's just the British way. Anyway, stiff upper lip and all that. So she gives me a stalk of raw broccoli, and I eat it. I was like, oh, it's delicious. Why don't we always have it like that? Well, she was so insulted that her cooking was clearly not up to par, as evidenced by my reaction to broccoli. She never gave me raw broccoli again. She just stuck with the old, thoroughly boiled broccoli. You can eat raw broccoli in your own time, but not mine. Anyway, any raw vegetable that kind of tastes a little bit sweet to you is going to work as a source of fermentable carbs and soluble fiber. So you don't need to get more scientific than that. And make sure it's 1/6 of the food in a dish. So in a nutshell, it's probiotics and a real food diet, and if you get those in place and you're still not happy, then when you layer in herbal formulas like these, then it's easy for the herbal formulas to create the results you're looking for. Now you're thinking, well, so if my dog's on kibble, is that pretty much off the table then? Should I not try it? A lot of Laura's dogs were not eating real food when I first started working with them. That's the reality of running, a senior dog rescue. So, and they did work. So I'm not saying they won't work if you're eating kibble. I'm just saying if you want to get there faster, then that's how you do it. So before we go to any questions, I'm going to introduce, I'll just show you one other thing. Laura made reference to the mobility stuff. So there's 3 formulas up here. There's 3 more that are coming within the next week to 10 days. The orange one, the Voltrex, that's the formula that Laura found so helpful for that dog that couldn't walk. And then she often follows it up with a red one, which is called Lumbrex. She finds if she uses them in the old 1-2 punch, that she gets a lot of stiff dogs walking. So if you do go to the Gold Standard Herbs website, you'll see those pop up in the next week to 10 days. But people ask me, what supplements do I take? And so that varies. But I can tell you with certainty, if you ever ask me, so which veterinarian would I go to? I can tell you for sure it is this gal over here. There's nobody who's more dedicated. I got stat. Right, see? She's got fans. Nobody more dedicated, more loving, more funny, more charming than Karin. So it's a pleasure to hand the microphone over to her, and she's going to talk a little bit more about some animal stories and how she used integrative medicine to get them better.
We have to switch over here, but I see a lot of faces out there that I know. The story behind this, though, and the fact that he's doesn't have a green card, he does have a California veterinary license. They gave him that, but then won't let him work. But the 2 cents on that is that he just went out and started helping people who really need it. And even before there was a problem with COVID and a pandemic, we are really struggling as veterinarians. We're down 40,000 veterinarians, and lots of people my age left during that pandemic. It's really hard. And what's really frustrating, he alluded to, is just we have these great things that work and are safe and gentle, but you can't get them unless they're prescribed by a veterinarian. And there are even fewer veterinarians who are board certified in acupuncture and Chinese herbs and have been doing it for decades. So it just gets really tiny. So we were super motivated to get products that people could access, because as an integrative vet or holistic vet, I really rely on pet stores like these beautiful boutique where people are knowledgeable and they can help and they can take the time, because the vets don't have the time, and only a small percentage of us actually went back and took more nutrition or graduated from veterinary schools that required we knew how to cook a meal for animals before we graduated. So I went to Tufts. I'm from Boston, the huge nutrition program, but when I got out, I noticed that was just Tufts and maybe not so much. So anyway, I like cases. When I lecture or listen to lectures, I often get really sleepy unless there's a case. So all of these cases are from the last 30 days. So I am the medical director of Bird Rock Animal Hospital. It is a tiny little hospital in Bird Rock. And the owners of that hospital are super encouraging to alternative medicine. So for me, it was a good fit because I don't know how to practice without sticky needles and things. So here we go. The one thing we didn't talk about, there was that picture that Purina is talking about. If you have a healthy biome, then you're going to have a healthy, brain and skin and everything. And those are big catchwords right now. That journal goes out to every single veterinarian in North America. That is our biggest journal. Every vet in North America got that and saw those ads. But the problem is Purina's product isn't really great, and you could add anything to pork kibbles that are over-processed. It's not going to work, but the science is there. So we use that science, and we use it in a way that's called multimodal. The artist of this cat waiting to get spayed here in Fort Kick-Ass, no boys allowed, is here in the audience. But I just was sharing these things, and this boy here, he is an acupuncture needle on his head. These are ways that we practice multimodal medicine in our hospital. It's always the way I practice, whether I knew alternative medicines or not. Animals need to be happy. They need to have a place to be. The staff needs to be happy. My staff needs to know that they can color literally my tech did that. I walked in and started laughing. Then everyone's laughing and everyone's happy. So it's a little sidekick for me because there's a lot of worry right now. Everyone's stressed out. COVID hit. Couldn't bring your animals in the hospital. I kept going out the whole time to talk to people because I can't practice without talking to humans. But the result has been a surge in anxiety for everybody, right? Humans and dogs and rescues. So I just wanted to share 3 quick cases, and then afterwards you can ask questions to any of us. Is this mic okay? I feel like it's okay. Okay, so this is Mia. So there are different kinds of aggression, but one of the scariest kinds is fear aggression. So she's just terrified. I think that she probably has had some very bad experiences in veterinary hospitals where if you're small, you don't really have a fighting chance for someone to just take their time and talk things through with you. So she has a history of being muzzled. You'll see underneath her description, we do have lots of things that we write. So Mia is in red with bites and a muzzle necessary. Now, I don't like to use muzzles because I think it freaks them out. So these owners did not come in for anxiety. They came in because she has a lot of vomiting. And so I was treating her with a Chinese herbal formula, prescription one, not one of these, but and she's doing well. But now they don't want any more drugs ever, which I love when I get a case like that. But we got to check our rabies titer. Rabies is out, and we need 5 mils of blood from this tiny dog who is 10 pounds. And we have to get it from here. So, of course, the owner is very agitated about this as well. And we tried a few things, but there's no way I know as a vet I'm going to be able to give one little, let's do some CBD and it's all going to be groovy. CBD is great, but it likes playmates. It plays well with others. It's not a solo guy on the playground. He needs to have a team. He's a team player. So she did, I didn't put it on here, she did have CBD. Rescue Remedy, if anyone knows those Bach flower essences, they're also awesome multimodal, meaning they'll play well with anyone. So you're here, your veterinarians should be talking about these chill protocols. If I have any animal who is scared of the vet, I am preemptively having them come in with something. So Tufts University, actually my professors who I absolutely love there, came up with this chill protocol. It involves drugs and melatonin, and it works really, really well for scary animals who might kill you or hurt themselves. But for this little one with the Halcyon on board, and she was on it, I had them give it for 2 weeks. So this is the calming one. And it doesn't just work on your brain like the drugs do, it actually helps your adrenal glands, like that. You know, when you get freaked out, or we were driving here, we almost got in a car accident because this guy like pulled right, we're not used to, Canadians do not, you guys are triggered. Like, we just had to like, I'm still processing, right? But that feeling, that's your adrenal glands, that fight or flight, and you're like, oh, and that's how they come in. So you can give them all the trazodone and gabapentin and CBD in the world, but it's working here. And they're still like, oh my God, what just, so this stuff is so great because it comes in and it stabilizes your adrenal glands, calms you down there. So for her, on that stuff, and then our hospital was certified in gentle handling, so we use scarves. So you can use a scarf, maybe it's Canadian, but we put a scarf around them, and then it's kind of like swaddling a baby. It's really calming, and everyone has to slow down, because that's just my big thing with my staff, is everybody's got to kind of slow down. So this guy is a friendly lab, and his name is Thor, and he has just really, really bad skin. He would come in, and I would have to use antibiotics for sure. So he'd get what are called Staph aureus, so Staphylococcus aureus. Aureus means a circle. You ever see those big red collarettes on dogs? And they're itchy, and he smells like the room kind of smells, and when you pat them, your hand kind of smells. He was pretty bad. On a whole food diet, I played around with the microbiome, and he would be on Chinese herbal formulas, but it never held. It never held. He was always coming back. And the thing with Thor is he is a therapy dog. He works with children who get open heart surgery. So he not only has to be really handsome, he needs to be clean, because we do not need a MRSA infection from him. So the thing that really changed for him was doing Cesarex by sealing up his biome. I do use probiotics. So for me, probiotics, Steve was talking about the fruits and vegetables. I always go to like yams and sweet potatoes. Dogs love them. They're generally very hypoallergenic. And he's on probiotics, and she just came and refilled this, so he was on my mind. She said he's doing fantastic for the longest period of time. And everyone who has a dog knows, I hope, that this was a really bad allergy season. I've been doing nothing but treating skin for 3 weeks now, and everyone's on flea products, and it's just been very terrible. But I wanted to share this as a quote from a magazine article about while recovering from open heart surgery. The little girl walked down a hospital hallway with her surgeon. They encountered a therapy dog named Thor, and the doctor offered a stethoscope to the child so she could listen to the yellow lab's heart. And then the next sentence is her big smile and happiness. And that's because Thor's skin is better. You can go to the hospital for little girls. And so for me as a veterinarian, it's a very stressful thing. I'm not just like, oh, I need to fix him, I want to fix him. And that's the reason I got into alternative medicine. Yes, I use antibiotics and steroids and other things like that. I love surgery. But when you use herbal therapies, when you're sealing the gut, when you're using real food, you're actually fixing them for good. You're healing them permanently. And I don't need more business right now. I just need somebody who can help and not come to me for the really bad stuff. So I know we've been talking about dogs. I have a lot of dogs that get this digestive formula. I have a lot of diarrheas. I have a lot of giardia in my neighborhood. But this is a cat, and most cats are rescued. And this cat is actually owned by another one of my technicians. She's not here. I love this about Morris. If you look, I don't know if you can see, but his weight is 16.3 pounds. He bites, but he's friendly. That's pretty classic, right? A cat. Somebody's a little bit inflamed and a little bit over, you're like petting, happy, and then they're like, rah, that's enough. But she came to me because he's obese and he's stinky and his litter box stinky and he even is like gassy and that, when you've got your leftovers in the fridge and you open them up and you're like, whoa, that's bacteria, right? That's what the gas is. So it's very easy. You're like, oh, that's the biome. Cats are carnivores. So I put him on that. I was really concerned because it's an herbal formula that it's a cat. Like, I could figure out what a cat needs, no problem. Getting them to take the medicine is a whole other thing. So anyway, he likes the taste. So these are very tasty. They have no corn, wheat, rice, soy, beef, chicken. They like pretty much like miso. It's like a yeast in there. And they taste good. People say that it smells like miso. And then he's doing really, really well. And we don't need to use, I love this perfume of kitten fur to make him smell better. So that's the last little bit. Here in the middle we have Milo. So Milo is a rescue from Lionel's legacy. And he is getting kissed by one of my technicians. Notice nobody's in a cage because I am a free-range veterinarian. I don't like cages. So you got me over here. I'm walking around with a surgery and someone waiting. But I think they're used to that. They don't live in cages. And so my staff has just had to adapt to that a little bit. Probably a little different than other veterinarians they've worked with. Milo was in for dentistry. He was found in a dumpster when you look at the x-rays, it's just horrific. Like, it's just every bone has been broken in this dog's body. And he's got really bad orthopedic problems that he gets acupuncture and chiropractic from me on a regular basis. But when I went in and took his dental x-rays, there were retained roots that the other vet had maybe missed, broke them off. So that's why dental x-rays are really helpful. I took those out and he felt better, right? Their parents are there, so. Yeah, so it hurts to have those nerves. It's really, really important in dogs to get the root out. You would never know if you don't take an x-ray. And then this last one is just driving home that you got to eat what you're designed to eat, right? So these are desert tortoises eating their salad and a bearded dragon just hanging out with me. But everybody has to just think intuitively about what we were designed to eat. So, and then I have a just completely silly Instagram. I put it on there. If anyone wants to watch videos, I started putting videos on of what happens when your dog goes to the back, because I've heard that people get scared by that. If you don't trust your veterinarian when your dog goes to the back, you might want to get another vet, because I can only say I'm so proud of my hospital. Most of these women work so hard and they love, love, love animals. So I do think that it would be good to see some visuals of what happens in the back of a veterinary hospital, because it's really sweet. I mean, I have 35,000 photos of how sweet it is. So. And that's that. Now you can ask questions. Maybe back to the famous guy. Oh.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for being here and all of your information. I have a 7.5-pound Yorkie rescue. He has Cushing's and heart disease, grade 3, and mitral valve. No regurgitation right now. Supportive care like lignans, melatonin, Chinese herbs, standard process. He's always eaten raw. Chiropractic. He needs acupuncture, so we don't do that. He was on Benton, and I started it with food. He was having, sorry,
It's okay.
he had seizures. He had one seizure when I switched it to no food.
Okay.
He was previously having a little diarrhea, which my cardiologist assured me was the only side effect. And then I did more research, said take it outside of food on an empty stomach. I did 2 doses and he had a seizure, and my cardiologist blew me off, said that that's impossible and that I was crazy. So I have taken him off that, and I have an integrated vet, and she deferred me to him. He said there's nothing else you can do. I would like to know if you have any other recommendations for supplemental care.
Right.
He's my whole life.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that cardiologist is a butt donut.
A butt donut. That's a great description. That's a new one. Yeah. Well, my top recommendation would be see my lawfully employed wife, because Karin has and I'll give you the mic in just a second. So Karin has she takes an integrated approach to this, and she would pick through the history and figure out the chart a path forward. And before she jumps in. So we had a similar case, and what we did for that dog was we put him on Halcyon. You think, well, he's not anxious.
No, but it's good for his adrenal. I mean, his
It's good for
Cushing's is very. We caught it before it even started.
Yeah. Well,
So
the
anything that will help
yeah.
him, I will do.
I would say that might be something that's supportive, because it is. I don't advertise it as that, but it is an anti-seizure formula first and foremost. Second thing it does is we have used that for advanced congestive heart failure, where there's a lot of pulmonary edema. And from a Chinese point of view, the problem is they view that, okay, if the fluid's all up here, it's supposed to be down here in your bladder. There's a problem with descent. And so that's another 2,000-year-old formula. They said this is what we're going to use to descend things, including this fluid from the lungs. So we find that formula works. I've taken dogs with severe congestive heart failure where they're seizuring just from coughing. Their tongues are purple, and you put a stethoscope on their chest, they're just like rattling away with all this fluid that's in there. The diuretics aren't working, and we've used that for a couple of months, and then the fluid all clears up in the lungs, the seizures stop, the coughing stops. So it's not exactly like your dog, but there's enough elements that I would wonder about it. But Karin seems to have some ideas here, so.
Oh, what I was going to say, so my first love is herbal medicine. I actually got certified in that before acupuncture, but that was like 2000, so it's been many years. But cardiology really does a good job with in the herbal realm, in that most of our cardiac meds came from plants. So there's a ton of research too, because 40% of women will get heart disease. So there are a lot of things that you can do, or what's phytopharmacology, like substituting in. So for example, with heart disease, you'd be on a diuretic, right? Like Lasix. Is he on that yet or no?
He's not. Everything's like, we just started Benton. I took him off yet.
But there are lots of alternatives is what I'm saying.
He's
So
on
like
multiple Chinese herbs, standard process.
Okay, who's your vet?
Dr. Ann Sear.
Okay, so yeah, there's just like great things you can do. Coenzyme Q10
He's on
will help with that. Dandelion is actually a potassium-sparing loop diuretic that's good for your liver as well. So they should all be on that. So there's just, and then there's other things. It just depends on the individual, but I would highly encourage you to, maybe talk to somebody who is really specialized in that. I don't know if she's, certified in Chinese herbs
She
or
is.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's on all that, and
But not a cardiac.
and liver,
Yeah.
Liver support, SAMe, milk thistle, some dandelion.
Okay.
There's just more.
It's really fun to see what that's seeing.
Yeah, like something the penal method doesn't work for us. So I was just
Yeah.
wondering when it gets worse. I'll just make it
I just have one other thing to add, which you could, like, if you don't want to switch horses in midstream and you want to continue to work with her, but you want to bring something new to the discussion, from a Chinese point of view, like you're looking at the pimabenda and you're saying, okay, seizure from that, so that drug is bad, we're not doing that. Chinese medicine would say, no, the pimabendin didn't cause the seizures. Your dog is preset to have seizures, and the drug brought it out. So there are no side effects from their ancient perspective. There's just the way you are, and if you get the wrong stimulus interacting with your body, then you get these adverse events. So what I'm trying to say is, a good Chinese herbal formula will treat everything that happened in an animal's past, everything that's going on now, and everything that'll happen in their future. In other words, there's this one ring to rule them all. But basically, there's a theme that runs through an animal's life. So at the very least, you should go to your vet and you should say, let's pretend that the heart and the seizures are connected. Let's pretend my dog still has seizures even though he's not seizuring because I stopped that drug. What do you got for me? And have her start to think in that way, and you might wind up with something that works for you.
That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Yes.
So I have 3 very healthy dogs because I feed them whole foods. So I have 3 very healthy dogs because I do feed them whole foods, real food. And I'm wondering, of these supplements up there, what's the best for just like a supportive care, like that you would recommend just to give, just because it would just help support their system moving forward?
Right.
I'll be talking about a few of those that are up on the table when the Q&A is done. So just, but
Yeah.
just so you know.
So yeah, I think that for me, medicine's like a game of darts. And when you have a sick animal, you're trying to hit the bullseye with your dart. And if you hit the bullseye, you only need one thing. When an animal is not particularly sick, then there is probably a number of different ways to rack up points and win the game. And so, so there's probably a lot of different roads that lead to Rome for you. Myself, I tend not to, if nothing's particularly bad going on, I tend to rely on a real food diet and its inherent complexity in order to get them where they need to go. But just to steal Margaret's thunder a little bit, she does have some mushroom extracts up here. One of the most benign things you can do for an animal that is still supportive is give mushroom extracts. You're almost never going to get in trouble giving a mushroom extract. But if you need immune support, for example, which who doesn't, then it's there bucking you up, and they're nutritive. So I'm sure Margaret will
That's
talk.
the mushroom one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mushroom extracts are an example of what you could do. You go ahead, Nick. We'll get to everybody, don't worry.
I have just 2 questions about raw food. So you were saying for the whole food diet to have 1/6 of it to be like fruits and vegetables. What do you think about the whole prey diet where, it relies on everything that's in the digestive tract of the raw food? So that's what they're getting.
In theory, it sounds appealing. Well, it's appealing, but you know what I'm saying. It would seem to make sense. Now, when I noticed that when cats hunt birds or mice or gerbils, or only if things are going really badly in your house are the cats hunting the gerbils, but you know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of chipmunks. Because before I came down to the States here, our cats were with us in our home in the Rockies, and there's these chipmunks that they've lived under our stone steps for years, and then the cats show up. So, they didn't all get slaughtered, don't worry about that, but 1 or 2 did fall prey. And of course, you always feel a little split, right? On the one hand, you're disgusted as the half of a chipmunk is lying on your floor. On the other hand, you're like a little proud, aren't you? Like, yeah, you go. Like, I'm so glad you got that left in you. So, but when I noticed the dead chipmunk, even in my horror, there's also the scientific curiosity of like, okay, you didn't eat the entire digestive tract. So animals don't eat the entirety of prey. They will kind of eat half of it. So that's the only comment I have on that. But in theory, the whole prey thing makes sense. I don't know if Karen has a thought on it. Any?
I think it depends on the animal too. So our own family of animals, which are 3 15-year-old cats and 2 dogs, one who's old, one of them needs more carbohydrates in his diet. He has severe inflammatory bowel disease, and without those carbs, he is not okay. It's this whole cascade of the biome. Whereas the other older dog is on a very low carb raw patty, and if she's not, she literally can't walk. So they're really different. So everyone is an individual, and that's why you have wonderful stores like this, where people don't know what they're talking about. You can come in and be like, "This is my situation," because not everyone's the same. You know, I mean, we probably should eat fewer carbs, babe. But we haven't been down here long enough.
Do you have any thoughts on the whole prey? No?
I would actually just, what you're saying, I think about people too.
Yeah.
You know, what people can eat. You know, my husband's 6'3", he's a big guy, and he needs a very different diet than I do, you know, and so I think that goes to animals as well, as much as we know about what they originally ate and what's good for them if they do require. And as they age too, you know, same thing. I've seen dogs where they do need more carbohydrates, you know, if they're not retaining weight, you know, you do have to start just kind of trying some things to make sure you are addressing their individual needs.
Yeah. And then that raw as well, which is a whole nother lecture, is it's very Japanese medicine, right? Japanese culture, raw foods, sushi, very high in antioxidants, the most unprocessed you can get. In Chinese medicine, soups, right? It's just things are cooked and warm and stir fries, and so that goes one step of processing. But as animals age, I will say, a lot of them, when they're getting up into their advanced geriatrics, not all of them, will need to have their food warmed or cooked a bit. It just takes so much from that pancreas to, that's the beauty of the raw food, right? But it just takes so much that when you're starting to age and have other problems, maybe you're having kidney problems and you need to really stay warm and keep your blood going, you will see animals want to shift to that cooked type of food or warm.
And I know this isn't really if I could actually say 2 things about prey model that I think kind of, one is, in theory, it makes sense. In reality, you're almost never actually feeding the whole prey, and you're missing a lot of micronutrients from fur and feathers and brains and eyes and glands and all that stuff. But the other thing too is our animals aren't living in nature. They're living in a highly toxic modern world, and they need antioxidants, and antioxidants come from plants. So that's one place where the plant world really is a powerhouse to include in the diet.
Good points. Nice question. Yes.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I've been on supplements for 5 years, and I've never felt so much better in my life. So I'm living completely.
Excellent. Congrats.
So the second thing is, I have a dog and a cat. The cat has colon disease, and he started it when he was like 8 months old. And they've got him on 2 different things. We've got to give him Miralax. And what's the other one? Cicipro. I just don't feel like he needs that, but you know, it works. Otherwise he gets blocked up, and you know, we've had him in there 2 or 3 times. They've had to go in and take everything out. He seems like he's doing a lot better now. He's one of my bottle babies, and I fell in love with him, and I kept him. And thank God I did, because I don't think anybody would have spent what I've spent on him. You know, he's a great cat. But I want to look into more natural remedies for him, because I just don't like giving animals these chemicals. Plus, I have a dog right now, because she was really good, and all of a sudden she started like randomly attacking other dogs, and she was really sweet, so they put her on Prozac. And it seems like that's an answer for everything. You know, give them Prozac.
Works for me. That halcyon stuff.
She's a really sweet dog. She came from the shelter. She's another rescue. But I want to put her on something, and I'm wondering, how long is that going to take to get into her system? The one for anxiety.
Well, you can give it with the Prozac.
You can.
All of these you can give with drugs.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, these things are designed to go with the drugs, because most of the time it doesn't take them all the way, right? So 4th of July, our neighborhood is by SeaWorld. It's a lot. Dogs are, I actually had not used trazodone in 19 years in Canada. And everyone's coming in, I'm like, what is with the Americans? Went home to Steve, I was like, everyone wants to tricyclic antidepressants. I don't even know what's happened. But it doesn't help them all the way. So then they're on CBD, and then they're on some of this. So you can multimodal. It's gonna be a safer way. And even if you just decrease your drug doses to half, or I'm very famous for my microdosing of drugs. They shouldn't be working at that level, but when you have other things going on, suddenly you just need like a tiny bit, and you can use something more natural.
And I've got an extensive background in ex-animal control, I do rescue now, so I just don't want her on that program. Okay, I don't want her, and I don't want JB on that other stuff. If I can get him on something more natural, I would really, really like to see it.
So in working with Steve, we've actually had a lot of dogs obviously on medications, and then Chinese herbs have been introduced, and we had to do the same thing where we don't just cold turkey stop the medications. It's like, you know, we add, it's layering on, like you said, the multimodal approach, integrating the different, you know, schools of medicine. And, you know, sometimes those things will work, and then you'll see changes, and you're like, oh, why is this not working anymore? It was working for the last 3 months. Now it's not working. And there's, you know, a level of frustration, but it is being almost like prepared to think about, well, okay, well, what else could I add on? What else could I include? And in those moments, 4th of July, you know, I mean, that's just a killer, isn't it? I need drugs.
But it's, you know, I used to work at the shelter, and you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
There's animals down there. Like I said, I took a lot of them. And I went from, after 10 years, I just said, I'm going the other way. And I've taken a lot of animals into my house. I've rescued a lot, I've helped with a lot of animals. But, and you're right, I don't want to put her on this stuff, you know?
Well, a couple of specific thoughts to your situations. First, you asked how long does it take to kind of kick in, assuming it was going to help. And it helps probably half the animals. Anyone taking this yet for their animals? Is it helping? Yeah. See, 1 out of 3. There you go, 30% odds. What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, in hours, yeah.
Same for
Sometimes when it works within hours. But we don't promote it like that. We say you gotta give it 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get in their system and get them calmed down. But the most stressed out animals will respond the fastest because their adrenal glands are secreting so much adrenaline, and we don't have any drugs that calm down the secretion of adrenaline. There's just none. But we have plans. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is I would get your dog evaluated for any pain. Because when a dog, like, and by that I mean a chiropractor, or if you have a veterinary acupuncturist, because they'll pick up on more than a regular vet will. When a dog feels little twinges, just like you might feel little twinges and your husband would never know, right? Dogs are the same way, but they know they're feeling twinges, and one of the things they do, they feel themselves less able to kind of defend themselves, move abruptly without feeling pain, so they start to get more snappy. They start to try to intimidate other dogs before they make a move because they don't want to have to make a move in response. So just, if there is a veterinary chiropractor in your area, a quick little visit just to kind of see how that works.
But her has gotten worse since we got the puppy. It's almost like at first she didn't like the puppy, now it's like, this is my puppy.
Yeah.
He's only 8 months old.
I mean, it could be something personal, but puppies are rambunctious. And so, you may have noticed. And so when a rambunctious puppy is around a dog that is tender and you just don't know about it, they will start to be preemptive, a preemptive strike. So just check it out. If it's not there, it's not there. For your cat, megacolon in cats is generally an inflammatory bowel condition. Both your animals would benefit from a real food diet. If they're not on one already, they would benefit. Your cat's constipation would probably resolve. just on a actual meat diet.
He is so bad. He'll eat tuna.
Perfect. Start with tuna. Give him tuna for 2 weeks and see if that stops. Or you don't like tuna?
I hate tuna.
Okay. Maybe salmon, or you go to Albertsons and get one of those roasted chickens. Try that. Our cats are chicken junkies, but that's real food. And for cats, they get a lot of inflammatory bowel changes from eating processed food, and that goes away even in just a week or two on real food. So think about that as a possibility. Lastly, the real food does have a calming influence on dogs as well, as we talked about. You're fostering a happier microbiome, and then they calm down in response. So a couple ideas.
We did that for a while. We did the turkey with the rice, with the vegetables.
Yeah.
So we do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Questions? Yes. Go ahead.
So I have a rescue that I've had for 3 years that has separation anxiety. When I think barks, stress, can't do anything, can't sleep, when it destroys. Might that be the anxiety?
Yeah. It might,
Or
for
did
sure.
I try?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The nice thing about when working with Laura, one of the things that was a parameter for me to work in is have something that if it didn't work, it wouldn't make anything worse. So about the most that would happen is they get some loose stools, and that doesn't even happen consistently. And if you lower the dose, then you might still get the benefits and no loose stools. And that's really it. And we're not talking about diarrhea all over the house. We're just talking about the stools with loose. So we tried to make products that were cheap, like as in inexpensive, not as in crappy. So inexpensive with no side effects, just so that if people tried it, it wasn't going to make the situation worse. It's either going to work or it's not, right? So I would give it a try based on what you're saying. Yes.
I have 2 questions. I have a dog that has oral mucosal mast cell cancer. It's been 2 years since any cancer. We had it removed traditional and went to Dr. Kangas for integrative. She's on mushrooms and everything and Antranax, but she just had her senior panel and her, I'm going to probably butcher this, enterophil white blood cell count was really high, which I researched and is like the masks.
Eosinophil?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
That's how you say
Yeah.
it. So I was wondering, the pink one, I don't remember the name of it, Cosrx?
The Cesarx.
Was that something that would help? Because I mean, she's on antihistamines pretty much always. She gets focal seizures from Benadryl, but she can take Claritin. Would that help with like the mast cells before they colonize those bad white
Yeah.
cells?
All 3 of them are sort of anti-cancer. So you want something that's anti-cancer, ideally, I guess.
And she gets allergies, and like right
allergic.
now she
Yeah.
has allergies. Like what?
Okay.
They'll probably go away by November.
Okay.
So
And the allergies are
typically-
skin, or
yeah, it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she has like flea derm. She's on flea control.
and it was a
on the side,
mast cell tumor.
in her mouth and lymph node.
Okay, and that's gone.
It is 2 years today.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think that Cesarx will be fine. It is an anti-cancer formula as well.
Okay.
They're cutaneous mast cells in dogs. A lot of the herbs we find the most effective for those dogs are in that formula.
Okay.
So I think it should be.
Yeah, she
okay.
was on Blood's Palace, but I like